Okay, we continue our conversation on 919, Johannesburg's official feel-good radio station. We speak to South Africans, interview organizations who are fanatical and obsessed with driving this brand that we call South Africa forward by rolling up their sleeves and getting into the meat of things. Now, early childhood development is the foundation of a thriving society, yet millions of young South African children lack access to quality early learning. With only 0.2% of government expenditure allocated to early learning and an ECD subsidy that has been stagnant since 2019, the real reform for ECD movement is calling on the Finance Minister. And as you know, the budget speech on the 20th of Feb has now been moved to the 12th of March. So now we've asked the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to prioritize funding for ECD in the 2025 national budget. Now, to speak to me now on their movement and the work they've been doing is Tshepo Mantjé, who is right to ECD Coordinator, about the urgent need for increased investment in ECD services. Tshepo, good morning and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on your platform. I'm so excited to be talking about young children and the potential that really lies in supporting early childhood development.
Yeah, so the budget speech gets cancelled on the 20th of Feb and moved to March. Your initial reaction to that, and then obviously you saw the allocation towards the ECD space. We had a slight conversation of air, and you were saying you were happy with that allocation, but obviously you now have to watch it because clearly it's being reworked, and we might be sitting with a completely new budget on the 12th of March.
Yeah. Before I even get into that, I want to lay your listeners some groundwork, context as to why we are even here in the first place. Early childhood development, most of us just think of a creche in some mama's backyard, right? We often think of it as a daycare, somewhere where children just go to sleep. But extensive research has come out about the importance of those early years in a human being's life. We're speaking about the first 6 years of a human being's life being a time when there is exponential growth in brain development, in physical development, and it lays the foundation of everything you will ever be when you are grown up. So things like reading and writing, by the time you get to high school, much of the foundation for that is set in early childhood development. How you sort of cognitively engage with the world and reason is set in that time in early childhood development. So understanding that, we have to then look at early childhood development differently, not just as some creche in someone's backyard, but really as the space that is laying the foundation for who we become as individuals, but more fundamentally who we become as a nation. So for such a long time, that has been sort of put to the side in South Africa, and we have seen a sector that has largely been informal in South Africa, right? However, as of a couple of years ago, the Department of Basic Education took control of early childhood development, taking it from the Department of Social Development to the Department of Education, where that really indicated a shift in South Africa's understanding of what we needed in terms of supporting early childhood development. However, that change sadly was done without a proper analysis of the sector, our needs, and what needed to change. So we have seen just a shift in our government name or our department name, but not real core changes in operation in the ground, in thinking, particularly in funding. You referred to it earlier that we have had a subsidy stagnant at 17 Rand per child per day. In simple terms, that means the government expects for a child to develop holistically only on 17 Rand per child. Holistically,
can you imagine what 17 Rand is in your budget per day?
Imagine feeding a child.
That is crazy.
I know a lot of your listeners are parents. Imagine your child eating nutritious meal on 17 Rand per child per day. And the catch is that the 17 Rand, not all of it goes to nutrition. It's actually only 6 Rand 80 that is ring-fenced for nutrition. So a child at an ECD center is expected to eat a nutritious meal at 6 Rand 80. And then the rest is then divided amongst resources like toys and learning material and salaries with the rest of that 17 Rand. So we have been calling for many years now for the Department of Basic Education to really put the intentions to manifestation by showing us that there's not just going to be what's in the 2030 ECD strategy that is not going to be supported by finance. For us to see that anticipated universal access that the DBE has said they're going to achieve by 2030, we need them to put the money where the mouth is.
Yeah, and it's not possible currently. And I know you guys have been asking for an increase, a minimal increase to 23 Rand per day.
Yes. So this has been also in a very, I guess, conservative ask, because what we'd actually need for holistic development is not just looking at the early learning component. We're also looking at nutrition, at responsive care, so training of practitioners and parents, because ECD is not just in the center, but it's in the home. We're looking at comprehensive health care of the child, right? And all of that would come up to about 36 Rand per child per day. However, really looking at the lay of the land in South Africa, we say, rather than reaching for that right now, let's rather restore that 17 steps. Rand to inflation, because when it became 17 Rand in 2019, that was set at with specific calculations that were made, but it has remained that way for the past 6 years now. But in effect, what was 17 Rand 6 years ago is not 17 Rand today due to inflation. The value of
money has also dropped.
Exactly. So we then landed at 24 as a way to meet inflation so that it can be adjusted to the inflation rate.
And your organization was literally started a year later. So after that adjustment was made in 2019, you guys came into existence.
Yes. So Real Reform was launched in 2020 in response actually to the legislation that was being changed. The Children's Act was being amended. However, the parts dealing with early childhood development were not representative of the needs of the sector. And also the sector was not consulted at the time. So Real Reform for ECD is actually a movement, not one single organization. We're a movement made up of 12 organizations on the steering committee, but also 300 organizations supporting the movement. And what we do is advocate for holistic, quality, and inclusive ECD services, primarily looking at how can policies, laws, and legislation of South Africa be changed to reflect and support the expansion of ECD services.
But I think you've had some small wins, right? You've had the small win where government did go back to the drawing board. And I think a couple of the laws that was proposed were in actual fact done without your consultation. You then lobbied extensively as the industry, as a sector. Government then went back to the drawing board. And I think one of the things you said, that you were quite heartened by the allocation in terms of the minister's budget that was meant to be read on the 20th. And now obviously you're hoping that stays because you were happy with that allocation because there was an increase.
Yes. So the budget where it was meant to happen, we had sort of a spoiler alert, right? Where the budget was given to a few people in the media to review. And then very last minute, the minister took it back to say we have to go relook at these proposals. And some of the things that were coming out of there was a 10 billion Rand allocation to ECD subsidies. That would have increased, like you rightfully said, from 17 Rand per child per day to 24 Rand. So even 1 Rand more than we wanted. We also saw that there was an allocation of 210 million Rand for ECD infrastructure, which is a big win considering that infrastructure is one of the biggest challenges we face in early childhood development. Many of our centers are happening within shacks, within garages, within homes that are
next
unstable.
To sewer pits.
Exactly.
Dirty water.
Seeing that kind of level of financial support for infrastructure would support a lot of centers, particularly also looking at one of the big challenges we have is that centers are not able to register, because since the DBE took charge, they have put standards on there, as they rightfully should, right? But that has meant that many centers who are not adequate at reaching those standards are not able to register. So support for infrastructure would then ensure that. Another one that we were very excited to see was that the child support grant, which is also a big component of supporting early childhood development, particularly in the home, was going to go up from 530 to 580, which is also something that we know supports young children, but also supports the home. But now, since the minister has taken that budget back, we don't know what changes will come from that. So we are urging everyone listening, everyone really caring about the children, but particularly about the future of South Africa, to raise their voice and try to protect this budget. Because we are saying as Real Reform...
Because that number's out now.
The number's out now. We know they can do it, right?
Yes.
We know that they understand the need to do it. And another argument that we make is that don't take this budget down, because research shows us that 1 rand invested in early childhood development has 13% return.
Wow.
Because we see that there's less dependency on government grants and support when their children grow up. There's less young children dropping out of school. There's less money spent on sort of policing because people are well equipped and they have had the foundation to become responsible human beings within our society. So this investment is not just for today, but it's really for the outcome of South Africa.
Yeah. How do you... And I don't know if you guys as leadership, you've thought about it. How do you get government to understand? Because I think sometimes government is tone deaf, to be honest. They live in a completely different bubble to the rest of us. How do you now get, and I don't know if it's even come up, how do we get the minister now to understand we would like more, but we're happy with the allocation that was being given, that not given, that we've seen?
That is really the foundation of real reform for ECD. That's the question we try to figure out. We're an advocacy movement, right? So we try to find where are the pressure points within government, who are the key role players we can work with and
like
sort of
champion our cause.
Champion our cause. So we have had multiple engagements with the new Minister of Basic Education, Ms. Sifiwe Gwahube, and she has been for the most part responsive to our movement, although we've had to resort to quite extreme measures. Last year in November, we took a constituency of 300 ECD practitioners to go camp outside the Department of Basic Education. And it was after that she engaged with us, and it was quite a positive engagement. I think but
it took an extreme action to draw attention.
So to answer your question, it's really around finding those entry points within it. So currently I'm taking on a strategy of writing letters to all the members of the GNU, because they're the ones who are going to be renegotiating that piece of that budget proposal. So hoping that they really understand. But the key argument that we make is seeing early childhood development as the potential to address some of the major issues that we have in South Africa, things like poverty, things like inequality, things like unemployment. We're seeing that should this budget go through as it was in the proposal, 700,000 more children will have access to ECD centers. 70,000 more ECD centers will be built. Our research is showing that from that money, 300,000 new jobs will be created within the ECD space. Wow. Because another issue is that one practitioner, one owner of a center is also the cook, it's also the cleaner, they're doing multiple jobs. Security, all of it. So we also need to work on the workforce. That means that we can employ 2 to 3 additional people at ECD centers. And who are those people going to be? They're going to be black women. Because we know that the ECD space, or even the care economy, is largely ran by women, and in South Africa, black women. So we are also addressing issues of gender inequality. So when we talk about ECD, don't just think about a child learning to draw and color and count.
And I think that's what we do, actually.
That's what we do, and it's a limitation on our part. So part of real reform for ECD's work is reshaping the conversation around ECD and showing the potential of ECD to address our key fundamental issues that our constitution tries to address.
As we wrap up, Tshepo, where can people follow this journey? I mean, a lot of our audience would have now heard this conversation and they'll be waiting to see if there's an adjustment or not. Similarly, you guys will as well. But how can they just get involved in the day-to-day stuff?
We really want people to get involved in this. Real Reform for ECD, like I said, is not an organization. We are a movement. We have over 1,000 ECD practitioners part of it, over 300 NGOs part of it, and way more also just everyday people, parents, community leaders as part of Real Reform. So anyone and everyone who really understands the potential of early childhood development, but more above that, really sees this as a space where we can change the trajectory of South Africa, can join and be part of the movement. We have a few campaigns that we're running around local government advocacy, around nutrition, around the national legislation. So you can go to our website, which is www.ecdreform.org And on that website, you will see all our campaigns, and then you can sign up for our newsletter and you'll be informed. Or you can check us out on social media to see some sort of on-the-day updates on what is happening. And there are opportunities for you to lend your voice to some of these campaigns, particularly in your local community. So that's ecdreform.org.za.
Tshepo, thank you very much for joining us in studio, and such an aspiring cause that you guys have taken on, and the understanding that if we get to children early, if we invest in their development early, we create productive human beings that contribute to the society at large. So kudos to you and the team and the leadership and all the other members that are really thinking long and hard about how we make systemic change. And I think that's going to be absolutely amazing. Okay, we are fast coming to the end of the show. Very quickly, she's back. Bridget Jones returns in the final installment of the beloved series, now navigating single motherhood and modern dating. Starring Renee Zellweger, Hugh Grant, and an exciting new cast, this romantic comedy is perfect for Valentine's Day. Book your tickets now at www.stairkiniko.com. From us, it's a wrap. We'll be back again tomorrow. You can find all these people, these amazing South Africans, on our LinkedIn pages, on our YouTube pages. You can go to 919 or socialtv.co.za. You'll find information on them, and you can link and follow them. Remember, be good, do good.